Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Assalatu wassalamu ala nabiyil mursalin. Allahumma shalli ala sayyidina Muhammadin fatihil mawfiq wal qatil ma sabaq nasril haq bil haq wal hadi ila siratal mustaqim wa ala alihi afdalil azim. Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh, everyone, wherever you are. May peace be upon you. We hope you are in good health and well-being together with your family. Welcome again to another night with Abdul Aziz Fredericks, which is an online dars on the same topic, the same book, I would say, 40 Principles of the Deen from Ihya Ulumuddin by Imam Ghazali. But this time, today and tonight in Singapore, Shaykh will be touching on the issue of pride and humility. And I think without further ado, we like Shaykh to begin the dars now. Inshallah. Tafadhal, Shaykh.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah wa ala alihi. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alim al-hakim. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. نويت وتعالى وتعليم تذكر وتذكير والانتفاع والفعل والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق الخاتم لما سبق ناصر الحق بالحق والهادي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله وصحبه ومقداره العظيم. So alhamdulillah, decided to move to the eighth principle of this section, which is on pride. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this was because in discussing our relationship with status, or our natural desire to have status, and how we have to deal with that, to make sure that we whenever we're seeking status, we're doing it in the correct way, and that we do it in a way that doesn't hurt people, and that the seeking of status isn't a means by which we damage our inner being, our inner spirituality, the essence of who we are, because status itself is an extremely harmful thing. It leads to pride, it leads to anger, and it cuts you off from many good things. It's one of the two enemies, so to speak, that are found in the dunya, in this temporal world. The pillars of the temporal world, of this temporary world around us, are status and wealth. And avoiding and trying to recognizing the status and wealth are dangerous will be a first step towards keeping ourselves safe spiritually, and so that our hearts will be pure, and that when we meet our Lord, we will meet in that state of purity. And in discussing that, I mentioned a hadith which is very relevant and leads us into the next topic. Just to go over that hadith, just to the statements of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I used it to explain the question about whether we're allowed to enjoy the beauty of dressing up nicely, of having a good appearance, of speaking well, and all of these good things. Is it valid? Is it right for us to do these if they lead to status? And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I quote the full hadith where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "La yadkhulu al-jannata man kana fi qalbihi mithqala dharratin min kibr," that nobody will enter the garden of paradise, if he has in his heart apologies. Wait. So no one will enter the garden who has an atom's weight of pride. And then a man said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Qala rajulun, inna ar-rajula yuhibbu an yakuna thawbuhu hasanan wa na'luhu hasana." So he says, this man says, there is a man who likes, and he's talking about himself, who likes to wear good clothes and to wear good shoes. So this is the context of what we were talking about last week. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied, فَقَالَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ جَمِيلٌ يُحِبُّ الْجَمَالِ. Indeed, Allah is beautiful and He appreciates when He loves the beauty, loves beauty. And meaning that this isn't what we're talking about here. Al-kibr, pride, is batar al-haq wa ghasat al-nas, is where you deny the truth. What denying the truth in this sense, and this the way that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has used it here, it means that denying that beauty originates from the source of beauty, which is God Almighty, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but rather attributing that beauty, attributing those qualities to oneself. That is what he's referring to here, that Allah won't allow that kind of person into the garden. And that as a result of this, he has contempt for people. He looks down on people. So I mentioned that hadith of last week, and I thought it was relevant to move on to that chapter on pride, because it touches on pride. We touched on pride generally, but the focus last week and the week before was on seeking status. Here, I'd like to look a bit more closely at the concept of pride, and in particular, its opposite, which is humility. And the reason why that's so important is I remember having the good fortune to actually start the book called Futuh al-Ghaib, and the Arabic translation of Futuh al-Ghaib in the English is Revelations of the Unseen. And I was fortunate enough to start in Singapore when Shaykh Maulana Afifuddin al-Jailani started to teach this book in one of the mosques in Singapore. And I was fortunate enough to complete the book. I wasn't able to attend the whole classes in Singapore, but to complete the book, most of it on my own. But with him, when he visited Sweden a few years later, and there was one very important thing that he said as we were completing the book. The last section is where Sayyidina Abdul al-Jailani, who is in some ways like the father of all of the spiritual paths of Islam, he said his foot is on the neck of every wali, that everyone, their path, really almost all of the paths of tasawwuf, of spirituality within Islam, go through this great man. And in the end of the book, he gives his final discourse of his 72 discourses in this book. And in it, he describes the 10 principles of his path. So this discourse is possibly the most important discourse of all of him, of Abdul al-Jailani's discourses. So alhamdulillah, I had the opportunity to sit with Shaykh Afifuddin as he was explaining this. And he said, of all of this, you can summarize all of this book, all of this discourse, all of this book, all of the teachings of Shaykh Abdul al-Jailani, the whole path in one word. And everyone's, whoa, humility. Humility. So here, this concept of understanding what pride is, because you can't have humility unless you understand what pride is, because pride is the thing you need to get rid of to become humble, to have humility. So perhaps at the end of the class, at the end of this session, for the blessing of the book, we'll read that last part that he was referring to. So here, understanding pride is really, really important for us to be able to travel the spiritual path. Because if Sayyidina Abdul al-Jailani, and through our teacher Shaykh Afifuddin, he said that this path is about humility, we have to understand what pride is. As I said previously, to deal with a quality within yourself, a negative quality within yourself, you have to first of all have knowledge of that quality. You need to know what's going on. You need to know the means to deal with it, and then you need to act on those means. And then once you've had ilm, which is knowledge, it leads to amal, which is action, which leads to what we call a hal, a state. So any quality, which is patience, for example, you need to know what patience is. You need to practice patience, and then you show patience in your state until your state becomes your maqam. What we call a maqam in Arabic is your station. So you have the station of being a patient one. And likewise, to understand humility, you need to understand pride. You need to deal with pride through action, and so that pride leaves your heart for those moments, that your state becomes a state of humility, and then eventually through your state of humility, your hal of humility, it becomes what we call your maqam, your station. So humility becomes your natural being, so to speak. And then once you've reached this maqam, this status, this station of humility, of being a humble person, then indeed you've traveled the spiritual path that is described by the Shaykh of the Mashaykh, Wahidin Abdul Qadir al-Jailani. So to understand what knowledge is, again, we will be following roughly the text that Sidi Khalid had asked me to refer to, which is Ghazali's 40 principles from the Ihya al-Din. But I won't be following it word for word because it's even though it's an abridged version, it's still quite heavy, and the time is quite short. So in essence, what he states is, first thing you need to know, what is pride? So the first thing is his definition, and I'll quote from the Arabic. He says, "An yara nafsahu fawq ghayrihi bi sifat al-kamal," is when somebody has pride when they see in themselves a quality of perfection. When they see in themselves a quality of perfection, and as a result of that, they see themselves better than others because they have a quality which is a good quality. And he uses the word quality of perfection. And I wanted to use the Arabic words because if we dissect them, we'll start to understand a little bit more about exactly what pride is. So just to repeat that, and yara nafsahu fawqa ghayrihi is to see in himself better than others in a quality of perfection. So when you have this feeling about yourself that you're better than others, you've got a good quality, they may also have a good quality, but yours is higher and better than theirs, then when you do this, what happens, it leads to certain behaviors. So your thinking leads to a type of behavior. And among these kind of behaviors he describes as wanting to take pride of place in gatherings. So you want to be the one who's in charge. You want to be the one that everybody's looking at. You want to be the one that has the key seat. So when you walk into a room, you expect people to find a space for you. You expect them to elevate your status because it's you. That's one of the qualities. And it says, ترفع في المجالس is the Arabic phrase he uses. But a more modern context is that you always want people to look at you. You always want people to see to consider your place higher than everybody else's place. That's one. You always want to be in the forefront. You're always chasing after to being in front, and as a result of always wanting to win, always wanting to have more attention than everyone else, always wanting to have more Facebook likes, always wanting to be having more people following you, and always wanting people to like your pictures of yourself, your selfies, and everything that you do. You put a picture of some food that you're eating or cooked or something, and you expect everybody to like it. That's an element. That is one of the consequences of this feeling of pride, always wanting to be in the forefront. As a result of pride, you want to put other people down. So when you see people, you see good qualities in them, you don't appreciate them. You always, that's nothing. Oh, so he knows a bit of Quran. So he prays. Oh, so she's quite good looking. Oh, he's got good clothes. It's always with the intention or with the feeling of contempt. And you look at others, as he says, another be'aina tahqir is that you look down on people. So if you have any of these qualities, then the source of these qualities, these behaviors, is pride. Now, it's wrong, completely wrong, and it's dangerous for your spiritual being. It's dangerous for three main reasons. Imam Ghazali mentions three main reasons. Let me go to the definition again. And yara nafsahu fawqa ghayrihi fi sifat al-kamal. One sees oneself better than others in terms of attributes of perfection. Beauty is one of. When we say attributes of perfection, we're talking about the qualities which are actually associated with the divine. Allah is beautiful. and he loves beauty. So therefore, beauty is one of the qualities which we call the qualities of perfection. That's what he's referring to. So if you think that you're more beautiful than somebody else, you're vain. You have this pride in yourself because you have you think you're better in one of the sifat al-kamal, in one of the attributes of perfection, knowledge. God has, this is one of his attributes. The attributes of perfection is knowledge. So if I think I'm more knowledgeable than you, then this is one of the attributes of perfection. And that if I feel myself better than you because of this attribute, then I have kibr, I have this pride. Why is it wrong? One is because what you're attributing to yourself is a divine attribute. And this is a form of polytheism, really, because what you're doing when we say polytheism, shirk in Arabic, what we mean is that we're stealing one of the qualities or associating one of the divine qualities, one of God's attributes, and putting it with somebody else, in this case, me. So it's not saying I'm building an idol and worshipping the idol. What we're saying is this idol is me. And we actually have this quality, this program, so to speak. What idol is that the idol is not about statues and worshipping big pieces of wood and big pieces of rock. That's actually is less harmful and less dangerous than worshipping the self and putting the self up there saying, yeah, I'm the one that's all knowledgeable, or not even all knowledgeable, partly knowledgeable. God is knowledgeable, and so am I. This is pride. And in essence, it's a form of shirk, which is why showing off is also called shirk al-asghar. This pride is the source of these bad attributes, qualities of showing off, of putting people down, showing contempt for people, always wanting to take the fault. All of these qualities are consequences of this form of shirk, polytheism, of attributing or creating an idol on this earth, which is me, myself. So that's the first. The second is through this quality of this characteristic of pride, it damages your relationship with creation. Why? Because you now see yourself as having a greater or more important role in the creation, in the wild, in the world, the wider world than you deserve. And as a result of this, you then think you have the right to damage things, to damage people, because it's only a piece of wood, it's only it's only a tree, it's only a car, it's only a person, it's only somebody's feelings. Because what you're doing here is you now have bad qualities towards creation, and creation in particular is a word that is used, al-khalq, is used to describe humankind, because humankind is the greatest of creation. So when I said it's people think it's only a piece of wood, it's only a car, it's only a person, it's only a person's feelings. You think you can damage these? Actually, the worst of those four things is the person's feelings. Damage is property. It's property. You damage him, you hit him in the face, you hit her in the face. That's bad. But you damage their feelings, it's even worse. This is the worst of all, because what you're doing, you're going to the heart of who that person is. And that's why kibr, this pride, is so bad. First of all, it's a form of shirk, so to speak, of stealing something from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, attributing it to yourself, creating yourself as an idol. Second is now you're using that quality to hurt God's creation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation, in particular his greatest creation, humankind, and the most sensitive and beautiful part of that person, which is that person's feelings. You want to hurt them by showing contempt to the word. That's why the hadith says, and he quotes a hadith which is not the one I quoted last week, but has the same meaning. Al-kibr man safha al-haq wa ghamas al-nas. Kibr, this pride, is where you steal, so to speak, or you deny the truth, you deny the attribution of these good qualities, these gifts to God. Wa ghamas al-nas, the hadith which is found in the Tirmidhi, the one I mentioned last week, was related by a Muslim, and the one that Ghazali mentions is Tirmidhi. The meaning's the same. Let's repeat the meaning. Pride is where you take the quality of God and you attribute it to yourself. You deny that it's from God. So, it's because I'm beautiful because I'm beautiful. um, rather than say Allah has blessed me with a quality of beauty which I know will fade when He wants it to go. And as a result, this pride leads us to have contempt towards people. So, and I'm going to go back to the text and read this directly from the text. Why? Because I've just told you what pride is, and here, this next section, or the beginning of the section, which is for those that have it, page 163, the 8th principle, it tells us exactly how bad this quality is. First of it says pride. Allah said, كَذَلِكَ يَتْبَعُ اللَّهُ عَلَى كُلِّ قَلْبٍ مُتَكَبِّرٍ جَبَّارٍ. Like this, Allah seals the heart of every conceited, haughty person. So in other words, kibr leads to the heart being sealed so that it can no longer relate emotionally to the rest of the world correctly. It doesn't have a healthy relationship. Why? Because it's sealed, it's stamped upon. And that when the heart is stamped upon, when it's described in the Quran, was khatama Allah ala qulubihim, the heart becomes sealed with a stamp. It can no longer relate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It has no gentleness, it has no calm, it has no peace. It's just solid, it's hard. And this hard-heartedness is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rejects. And who are these kind of people? Mutakabbirin jabbar. He says the conceited and the haughty person, the person who is full of pride. The person jabbar actually means oppressive, because those kind of people are people that are, because they think they're above everybody else, they don't care about hurting people's feelings. They destroy them. The highest level we described last week is that everyone has the potential to be like the Fir'aun, like the Pharaoh, when we don't have the opportunity or the ability. So what do? We become pharaohs in our families. That we put our wives down, our children down, we put our friends down. In our workplaces, we become pharaohs in the way that we manage our staff, the way that we deal with people. And this is a sign Allah has sealed that person's heart. That's the first verse he quotes. The next is فَبِئْسَ مَثْوَى الْمُتَكَبِّرِينَ, and wretched is the abode of the arrogant one. This is the second quote that he takes from the Quran. And when it says bits and mathwal mutakabbir, it really refers to the hellfire, and that links to what we were saying last week. And then he quotes some hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he says, Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Al-kibriya'u ridai wal-'azamatu izari, faman naza'ni fihima qasamtuhu." Sorry. He said, Allah's Messenger said, might is my lower garment. What you call in Malay the might is my lower garment. Haughtiness is my upper garment. Actually, I think, yeah, he's translated it the other way around. That's why it's confusing me a little. Kibriya, this is pride, is my ridai. Ridai is my shawl, the shawl that I wear over my shoulders, my neck. This kibriya is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah himself says, this is my rida, this is my shawl. Wal adhama, the might is my izar, which in I think you call sarong in Malay. Dhoti in Urdu and lungi in Bangladeshi, Bengali. So this the garment that you wear on you. So obviously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't have garments. So when he uses this, it's a metaphor. He says that the kibriya, the pride, the status is mine, my garment, and as likewise might is my lower garment. فَمَنْ نَازَعْنِي فِيهِمَا, whoever contends with me for them, whoever wants my garments, whoever is trying to get my garments, I shall break him. So this is a really, really harsh reality. This is something that we should really think carefully about, is that are we trying to steal Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's garments by trying to boost ourselves up to have pride, and that's, like I said, this is one of those two qualities. one of those two reasons why it's so wrong is because you're attributing God's qualities to yourself. Allah's Messenger also said, whoever has a particle's weight of pride in his heart will not enter paradise. And this is the hadith I began with. He also said, the haughty and the conceited will be gathered on the day of resurrection as pulverized bits, which people will trample on. So the Arabic is يحشر الجبارون والمتكبرون يوم القيامة في صور الذر. في صور الذر. He says that Allah will gather all of the. Again, he uses the word jabbarun wal mutakabbirun, the oppressive ones and the arrogant ones. And again, you see these two qualities go together: oppression towards people and pride and arrogance. If you have arrogance, it will lead you to being oppressive towards people. And oppressiveness comes from pride and arrogance. These people, on the day of judgment, when they're raised, Yawm al-Qiyamah, they'll be like dust, like particles of dust. Why? Because Allah would want to see, or everyone to see, how insignificant they are in the lives of, in His eyes, in His sight. So when those people are resurrected, they won't be resurrected like the great monsters that they were on the earth. The Saddam Husseins and the pharaohs and all of these people will not be raised in those massive statues and images that they had. Those people that died, that were jabbarin, that were oppressive in this world, on Yawm al-Qiyamah, when they're resurrected, they'll be pieces of dust just on the ground, not pieces, like pieces of tiny little stones, not dust, tiny little stones that have been crushed. So you can imagine those monstrous statues that are erected as idols for the rulers and kings, and they will be like those being destroyed, and only the particles will be resurrected, and they'll be resurrected in such a way that people will walk on top of them. And that's symbolic, and it's an image of the people who were downtrodden in this world. By those people, they will walk over those monsters on the day of resurrection. And it's not talking about just those monsters, it's talking about us, because we have those monstrous qualities when we show pride and contempt for other people. And then finally, the last hadith, the two hadith I'd like to mention, which he continues. He once said to Bilal, so the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was talking to Bilal, his trusted friend and companion, and the caller to the prayer. Verily, there is a valley in hell called Hubhub. So there's a valley in hell called Hubhub. Allah will rightly house in it every haughty person. So this place, this valley, is the place where all of these bad people will be sent. There's a specific place where they'll all be gathered in the hellfire. So beware, O Bilal, of being amongst those who reside there. So just make sure you be careful not to end up in that place. That's what he's telling his friend Bilal. And he's telling us, and through his actions, he's telling us through his actions to seek refuge with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from these qualities. وقال صلى الله عليه وسلم اللهم إني أعوذ بك من نفغة الكبرياء. He says, I seek refuge in you from pride swelling within me. The nafakha here is this fire burning inside you. I seek refuge from this fire swelling, this burning, swelling pride inside me. And as we mentioned previously, this fire is related to the fire of Iblis, of Satan. Satan was created from fire, and humankind was created from water and from soil. So these quite clearly shows that kibr is a really, really dangerous quality, and that we must do our best to deal with it. Now, how do we deal with it? Right, he gives Imam al-Ghazali, he gives a very clear and beautiful description, and it's all built around a verse of Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُتِلَ الْإِنسَانُ مَا أَكْفَرَ مِنْ أَيِّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقَ مِنْ نُطْفَةٍ خَلَقَ فَقَدَّرَ ثُمَّ السَّبِيلَ يَسَّرَ ثم أماته فأقبره. So this verse, it means man is indeed destroyed. How ungrateful is he? From what thing did he create him? From a sperm drop he created him, and then measured out his destiny. He set out his lifespan. The lifespan began with a piece of dirty water, the sperm entering into the seed. And then he facilitated the way for him, and then meaning he made his life easy for him. Then he caused him to die, and then he ended his life, and he buries him. So this verse summarizes who we are. This verse summarizes where we came from and where we are going. So in effect, if you contemplate this verse, then you won't really have a great deal of pride, because you start off as a piece of dirty water, and you end up in the ground as a rotting corpse. That's who you are. So what have you got to be proud about? So you think you're beautiful. There's nothing to be proud about there. So you think you're rich. There's nothing to be proud about there. If you understand this verse, pride will go from your heart. Let's read what Imam Ghazali says, because his commentary on this verse and explanation of this verse in the context of dealing with this trait of pride is very, very beautiful, and I'd rather just focus on his words himself. So the summative treatment for curbing the filthy trait of pride is for a person to know himself, that he is first a scattered sperm drop. In the end, he is a foul corpse. And between these two, he carries filth. Basically, what we do is that we've got these intestines, which are just basically bags full of excrement. It's just filth. As soon as it comes out, it's filth that you need to cleanse. That's what we are. We're just one big bag of excrement. He should understand the statement of Allah, الإنسان ما أكفره من أي شيء خلقه من نطفة خلقه فقدره ثم السبيل يسره ثم أماته فأقبره. Man is destroyed. How ungrateful is he? From what thing did he create him? From a sperm drop. He created him, and he measured out his destiny. Then he facilitated the way for him. Then he causes him to die and buries him. Hence, he should know that he was created from the silence of non-existence. Where were you 100 years ago? Nothing. Not even mentioned. And there is nothing that is less than nothingness. There is nothing less than nothingness. You were nothing. Before you were born, you were nothing. Thereafter, Allah created him from dirt. Allah created human beings from dirt, from the soil, and then a drop of sperm. When he refers to him being created from dirt, he's referring to Sayyidina Adam, the father of all humankind. That before Adam existed, there was nothing. There was no humans. Allah took the ground, the dirt of the ground, and he added water to it, and it made clay, and then it was molded into the form of the human being. So our origin is the clay that Adam was created from. And that's why within Islam, when a certain person dies, we put them into the ground, we place them in the ground, we throw soil on them, and we say, Bismillah, in the name of Allah. Min Allah, we came from Allah. Wa ilallah, and to Allah we will go. Wa ala millati Rasulillah. And we hopefully going on the religion of the Messenger of God. So here, this is the way, the natural way. And I say natural deliberately because it's universal to all of the religious families. When the Christians are buried, they go into the ground and we place the soil on them exactly as we say dust to dust, ashes to ashes. The dust returns to where it came from. This body returns to where it came from. So that's all we are. A piece of dirty water, we were nothingness, and then we're a piece of dust. Thereafter, Allah created him from dirt, then a drop of sperm, then a clinging form, meaning he's describing how you were just a piece of blood, a blood clot in the womb of your mother. What was this? It was that sperm entered into the egg and hung there, literally hung, alaqa. So this alaqa hangs as a piece of blood and then grows and grows until it becomes a fetus, and then a piece of flesh, mudgha, a piece of like looks like chewed meat. He had no hearing and no sight and no power. That's what you were. And then Allah created all of this with the most, and yet he is still deficient in the extreme. And then sickness and disease overcome him. So he comes out of the body and then he becomes ill. And his natural components are in opposition to one another, some of them destroying others. So our bodies are actually trying to fight, trying to get a balance within itself. He becomes sick against his will. We're being hit by this coronavirus all over the world. And when I hear that, one of my friends and teachers is sick in hospital with this illness, and I hear that my neighbor in Mombasa, he died of this illness, also one of my teachers. And then I hear that my good friend in London, he died of this illness. This is hitting people very close to us. We have no choice. It might hit me, it might hit you. We can do our best to fight it, but in the end, this is in Allah's power. Those people didn't choose to die. They didn't choose to get this virus. This virus hits good people and bad people. It's not by our choice. We have no power. Then we're hungry against his will. We're thirsty. He's thirsty against his will. He wants a thing, yet he's ignorant of it. He wants to forget a thing, then he remembers it. We want to get something out of our mind, we can't get it out of mind. We want to get it in our mind, we can't get it in our mind. This is how useless we are. Not for a moment is he secure from losing his life. Every single moment, Allah can take his life, his mind, his health, or an organ or limb from his body. Allah can just put, one day, we were just sitting in the dars. Sarah started to feel unwell. Within 5-6 days, her lungs were virtually destroyed, unable to function. Just like that, destroyed, gone. A friend, he just got an infection in his foot. Foot was gone within days. This is what Allah can take our bodies, our lives, our minds, our limbs at any time. Finally, he dies and is subjected to punishment and accountability. If he is from the people of hell, then a pig is better than him. He dies and he goes into the Jahannam, then he'd rather be a pig or an animal than if he was to go to. So in what sense does he have pride about him? In what way is a lowly slave possessed by another and is unable to do anything? Hassan al-Basri saw a man that was had a swagger, was walking, like this, and then he said, "This is not the walk of someone who has excrement in his guts." So does he not know what he's got in his intestines? If he knew what he was carrying around, his one big bag of, he wouldn't be walking like this. So that's the first thing, is to know what pride is, to realize it, and then to start to think about that, contemplate that, act upon that in sense of lowering yourself, humbling yourself before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also humbling yourself in front of people, because there's no reason to start taking show that haughtiness. And once that becomes your action, it becomes your state. This becomes your state this becomes your state of humility. Now that's what Imam Ghazali talks about as the general principle, al-jumla, the general principle of dealing with pride. But then he goes into some detail about 4 types of pride. But because they're not relevant to everybody, and they're quite detailed, I'll leave this for people who want to research it further. And the 4 types of pride are pride in knowledge, where you think you're better than others because you think you have knowledge. And this is really, really very dangerous. And one of the examples is that people will be spoiling everything that they've learnt if the knowledge that they gain takes them to the fire. So if you learn the knowledge of the Jannah, the garden, which hopefully will take you to the garden, but then it leads to pride, and the pride will take you to the fire, then you've really lost a great deal. And this is one of the biggest dangers of the scholars, and the biggest illness of the scholars, as is described, is pride. And he talks in detail about that. The second is worship, is that when you start to worship you think you're better than other people because you think you do more worship than others. Now, both of these two things are kind of connected. And the best example would be if you look at the early days of Islam, there were great, strong believers, but some of them, one or two of them actually didn't maintain their Islam. They left, they went to Ethiopia, and one or two of them ended up not dying in the state of Islam. And there are others from that group who didn't reach the status of the likes of Umar ibn Khattab. Now, Umar ibn Khattab at that time was a man that was known for his heavy drinking. He was known for his quick temper, which often led to extreme violence. He was known for his pride. He was known for his pride in his appearance and his clothes. He had all of the qualities which people looked at that time with contempt. However, when Allah put love into his heart, all of those negative qualities disappeared immediately, and all of the things that he'd done in the past no longer part of who he was, or sorry, they were part of who he was, but they purified him. So, they were purified so that those qualities of anger, of ability to understand, his pride, his quickness to temper, even his drinking became a knowledge of how dangerous it was. All of these things strengthened him, which is why when the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, somebody came to him and says, "Who's the best? Who's the best of people?" And he then answered, "خيركم أتقاكم," the one who is the one who has most righteousness. And then he says, then he quotes a verse of Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "In akramakum indallahi atqakum," the most noble of you is the one who is the most righteous. And then he says, no, we want to know, we don't want the general advice, we want to know which person, which human being. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the most noble human being, was the most righteous one, and that was the Prophet Yusuf, who were Karim ibn Karim ibn Karim ibn Karim. He is a nobleman, the son of a nobleman, who was the son of a nobleman, meaning Joseph was the son of Ishaq, the son of Isaac, who was the son of Yaqub, son of Jacob, who was the son of Ishaq, the son of Isaac, who was the son of Abraham, Sayyidina Ibrahim. Now he says, no, we don't want to know about the past, we want to know which one of us is the best. So he said, "An-nas kal-ma'adin." Human beings are like buried treasure. خيركم في الجاهلية خيركم في الإسلام. The best of you in Islam, the best of you in Jahiliyyah, the best of you in Jahiliyyah in the times of ignorance can become the best of you in Islam, Umar. So that person he was referring to, that people looked at as they were worshippers and he wasn't, in the end, he ended up better than they did, with more knowledge than they did, and a higher maqam, higher status than they did. So when you look at somebody who's not Muslim, you look at somebody who drinks, you look at somebody who has, you look at any quality in other people, you should remember that you don't know whether Allah's going to take those good qualities from you and going to bestow an even greater status on that. So don't look because you've got knowledge, because you worship more, that this is a reason for pride. These two are two of them. And then the last two is lineage. And he talks about when people take pride in their lineage and how to deal with that. And then the last one is dealing with pride in possessions, that we have more things than other people. So these are the 4 types of kibr in detail he deals with. And I'm going to leave pride there because I like to finish on a positive note, which is about describing humility, a positive quality. And as I mentioned, that Shaykh Afifuddin al-Jailani, he'd said that the whole of the path of his ancestors, Sayyid Abdul al-Jailani, is in humility. And I'm just going to read from the Futuh al-Ghaib, the English translation of it, where he talks about the very last paragraph, so to speak, or the very last point he makes. He talks about the 10 principles of the spiritual path. And he said the 10th is humility. And as I mentioned, Shaykh Afifuddin, he said actually this encompasses all the other 9. The 10th is humility. For it is with this virtue that the servant's residence is erected, meaning in the garden. The place where you're going to be in the garden will be based on how you are in this world, and humility will lead to your station there. That his station is raised high, that his honor and eminence are more made perfect in the sight of God, glory be him, the sight of Allah, glory be to him, and in the sight of his creation, of his creatures, and that he is empowered to achieve all his worldly and outwardly goals. This virtue is the root, the branch, and consummation of all virtues, whereby the servant attains to the stations of the righteous, those who are content with Allah, in joy and in sorrow alike. This is the perfection of piety. Humility means that the servant never meets anyone without assuming him to be more worthy than himself. He will always say, perhaps he is better than I in Allah's sight and higher in degree. In other words, when you look at somebody, and I just remember in a case where there was a guy, I was in Tunisia many years, I was just a young teenager, maybe 16 years, 17 years old. There was this drunk guy sitting, he was an ex-sailor, I remember that because we talked about it. And he was just sitting there like drunk, out of his mind. Some person walked past, some tourist was walking past and was looking at it with contempt, looking at the Arabs and the Muslims with contempt. And he started to insult Islam. And the drunk was just like, then he insulted the Prophet Muhammad. This drunk guy just lost it. You can insult me, you can insult my religion, you can insult my nation. But you mentioned the Prophet. He got up and he just smacked him and he flattened this guy. And everyone's thinking, why are you so, you're in no way you a follower of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Look at your behavior. And everybody looked at him, and I looked at him and I thought, he has such love for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and his status in my eyes was so. And I realized that you can't make judgments about people. And that lesson that I learned from that drunk person, may Allah raise his station, taught me a great deal, and that was possibly one of the things I learned. One of the highest lessons I ever learned was that the love for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, embodied in a human being, is what we should aspire to be. So I aspire to be like that drunk. So perhaps he is better than I in Allah's sight and higher in degree. If it is someone young, if you look at somebody young, he will say, this person has not offended Allah as I have done, so he is undoubtedly better than I. So if you look at somebody who's younger than you should always look at them with love and respect and honor. But this person is closer to God than I am. He's not made as many mistakes as I have. And if the person is older, then you look to that person. This person served Allah long before I did. If it is someone who's learned, you look up to them, and that this person has received something I have not experienced and is something I have not required. And he knows that if I am ignorant and he puts his knowledge into practice. So it is also, if you look at somebody with ignorance, then you can look at him and think, well, he's doing bad things. Okay, maybe he's drunk a little bit too much here. But he did that out of ignorance because he doesn't fully understand. Whereas when I do bad things, I actually have knowledge. So when I'm showing pride, for example, then I'm doing something which is really bad, but I have a degree of knowledge. So that person that's doing something bad, you look at them and you think, well, they're doing it out of ignorance, not out of, so I'm actually worse than they offer. So this is what he talks about. And then he goes on, if it should be an unbeliever, and if you look at a non-believer, you should look at him and say, I don't know, perhaps he will embrace Islam and come to a good end. Maybe I shall become an unbeliever and come to a bad end. So this is what humility means. It's about sympathy and empathy for other people and understanding your relationship with people. To give us this reality of humility, to make us of the people who really understand inner meanings of Islam, or what the Prophet Muhammad taught us, to take these bad qualities from inside us and replace them with good ones, especially during this month of Ramadan, when we're trying our best to aspire to these high qualities. We ask Allah to give us tawfiq, to give us increase, and to give us this pardon, to wipe out all of those bad feelings, those bad qualities. Allah, innaka afuun تحب العفو فاعف عنا, wipe out those things. إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا. وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وسلم. جزاكم الله خيرا. With that, I think I should stop and hand back to Sidi Khalid in case there are questions.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
MashaAllah, alhamdulillah. It was interesting dars today, and it's actually why I say it's interesting because it's sort of correlated, but it's still different from where we started. Anger, and then status, and then now pride. So mashallah, there's so many things that we need to introspect ourselves. And thank you once again for the blessed dars that we try to improve ourselves and muhasabah upon ourselves. So there is two, three questions for today. First question, I have a question. As much as we understood the traits of a person with pride, how does one cope in a toxic relationship when you are constantly put down, belittles you, does not give you any credit when their character is filled with immense pride? How does one deal with a mentor at work with such character? Do you seek help to not be offended by them? That means you try to change yourself, or muhasabah as I mentioned just now, or how do you advise them then? So when their rank is much higher than you, when you try to fix them. Yeah.
Right. I think it goes back to what we were talking about last week and the week before.
Yeah.
That everybody needs a degree of self-respect and self-esteem for your own emotional well-being. There is a minimum level that a human being requires for them to function as a human being. The mind has to have a degree of what we call emotional intelligence, emotional stability, or emotional matter, so to speak, within our lives. And if somebody's constantly damaging that, then you need to be very careful of that relationship, and it needs to change, because you can't continue like that and still be mentally and emotionally healthy. And you need to have a basic minimum emotional health for you to function. So if it's in an intimate relationship like husband and wife, then this is what when you mention toxic relationship, these are the kind of toxic relationships that really can't succeed. This kind of marriage cannot succeed. It will, if people like to stay together, it's at the cost of the one who is at the receiving end of this. That person has to sacrifice so much, but it's not really a marriage, because there's no love. This is toxic, and in most cases, it requires either drastic changes in the relationship, or it's going to come to a natural end. And sometimes it needs to come to an unnatural end, where it's actually forced to be closed, because there are times where I don't have any shame anymore. I remember previously always trying to always repair relationships. My teacher, Shaykh Galal, I learned a great deal from him. And when he used to talk to people in marriage, he used to say, "I'll tell you now, I don't do divorce." And he was my teacher. So for a lot of my early years, my time in my own relationship, I don't do divorce. I don't, and when people come to me, I'm putting it on the table. I don't do divorce. Actually, I've grown since then. Divorce isn't the end of the world. Divorce is less harmful than the toxicity of some relationships. And where somebody's in the relationship that's that toxic, that they don't even get the basic human level of emotional stability, then divorce is often the only way. So I'm not saying that you can never repair relationships, but when it gets to that point of toxicity, it needs to end. And if that means leaving the job, if it means leaving the relationship, That's the most extreme. Hopefully, you don't get to that point. And there's a point before that where you think there's a method to be able to deal with changing that relationship. But to change the relationship from the weaker position is difficult, because when you're a subordinate, so to speak, you mentioned the work position, when your boss is a narcissist, when he's a bully, when he's aggressive, when he's doing all these things, if that's the case, then for you as the victim of that narcissism, of that bullying, it's difficult for you to turn it around. There are methods of dealing with that person, but what's probably more important is to deal with yourself, because there's very limited capacity, so to speak, of changing those kind of people. I'm not saying it's impossible, but there's limited capacity, and usually you can only do that once you've got some basic emotional stability yourself, and you've developed that emotional capacity, that emotional competence, that emotional intelligence to be able to convey that to others. So how do you get that? And they're the sort of things that you need to build up your self-esteem. You also need to know that when somebody says something bad to you, it's not true. That's what I was saying last year, that if it's a lie, it's a lie. If somebody says you're this, you need to be able to work out when they're just trying to trick you into thinking that you're bad when you're not bad. When they try to, I'll give you an example of somebody that very recently, she actually felt that she was flirtatious, that she used to flirt with her brother-in-law, because her brother, the husband, used to say, "Why do you have sleeves that are like this? You know, why does your sleeve come up?" She says, and she couldn't eat. She really didn't know that her sleeve. But because he was so aggressive and because he was so adamant, that she raised her sleeves, and she started to begin to think that she was being flirtatious to her husband, sorry, to her husband's brother. And if she got to this point, and she's really has become almost unwell from this situation. She came to visit us in the house, and she came, alhamdulillah, she went straight to the kitchen. She was chatting with Sarah, and I walked past, and she's with her head lowered and my head low. She said, "Salamu alaikum." And I, "Alaikum salam," and I didn't really notice. And then after she drove out, then she phoned almost in tears to Sarah. "I'm so sorry, I flirted with your husband." And she laughed. "When did you flirt with my husband?" He just walked past and she said, "No, I said salam to your husband." And she actually got to the state where in her mind, she believed that she was bad. Because she's been bullied so much, she's been, so she has to have, so she can't deal with other people. She can't turn to a bully and say, "Stop bullying you." She now needs to build that inner strength within herself of how she can stop and falsehood. And the only way to do this, or the main way to do this, is to go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ask him for help, ask him for guidance, and also to look at him a bit more critically, at the bully, at the narcissist, at the person that's doing this to you, and look, is this valid? And usually it's not. And to say, "No, have I actually done that?" And to be able to say, "No, that's not true," at least to yourself, to say, "No, I'm not being flirtatious. No, I'm not being stupid. No, I'm not doing this. No, I'm not ugly. No, I'm not fat. No, I'm not this. No, I'm not that." And part of that will be where the cure is. And sometimes you need help to get there. And that's where good friends, sometimes therapy, sometimes just co-reflecting, where you reflect with somebody else and talk to people about what you're experiencing. And you might find actually there's a lot of people who are in relationships which are abusive emotionally. So that's a long answer to a short question, but these are the kind of strengths you need to build within yourself, or himself.
I understand that, and it's a beautiful explanation, Shaykh, in details, and the way how we say you will always say, like, saying it in a particular manner and in dealing with it. I think it's important because sometimes we tend to generalize and we don't see the inner details of how we go about. Okay. So the next question is, Shaykh, what if we, just you were mentioning about majlis, then suddenly someone were to post something and out of your knowledge, and then you feel like you don't understand this knowledge, or you don't have the ability to understand this knowledge, and then it becomes uneasy for you. So does that seems to be pride? That's the question now. So if the knowledge that somebody said or posted, maybe in WhatsApp or Facebook, then you do not understand that knowledge, and then you are triggered, like you are unhappy with that person, or somehow you feel that you are lonely than the person. So is that pride?
It can be pride because it's almost like a reverse pride where you become angry because the person has hurt something within your, what we call your nafs, your ego, and then you turn it on them. They have some, so you have some quality within your nafs, within your inner being, your ego, which you then turn in anger on that person. So it's almost like a reverse pride, and there's sometimes where sometimes many a time where I really don't understand what's going on. There's one or two brothers I just like sometimes read what they're saying and just smile because I have no idea what it is, but it sounds really nice. And I remember going to one of my teachers in Jordan, well-known Shaykh there, and somebody asked me, could I translate what he said? I said, of course I can't. I can tell you the words of what he said, but his knowledge is so far higher than mine that I can only tell you words. I can't explain what any of these things mean because he's talking. So they said, like, but you're supposed to be a sheikh, and why do you call him your teacher if you don't understand? He says, because I don't, but I still love him, and I still love being in his company, and I still love listening to those words, but I also realize there's some things which are just above me. But then there's things also that I realize I need to know in these very clever, when teachers are teaching me. And I need to be able to differentiate that which I can see is important and I don't know, and those things which are beyond me and I probably never will know. So when I hear some of my teachers and some of the clever people that are on Facebook, WhatsApp, sending all of these clever messages around them, these very deep things, most of I say, mashallah, Allah increase you. I haven't got a clue what you're talking about, but it sounds good. And that's fine if you can just take it at that level. But then when it's something in there, you think, he said something, I need to know what this means. Then it's pride stops you from asking. So if you were to say, could you just explain that to me? If you can't say that, then probably there's a degree of pride. And you need to kind of swallow that and just realize that if this is important, I need to know it. And so you deal with it in the way that we just said. And it's also that everybody has their own specialisms. Everybody has their own specialism. There's people that know lots of deep stuff. That's not for me. That's their thing. And there's people that have got really good memories, but that's not my thing either. But there are other qualities which perhaps they don't have. And I'll give you an example of somebody came to one of my teachers, Sheikh Muhammad Malamali Adam, and he's I'm the dirt on his shoes when it comes to knowledge. He's like a giant. And he says, why are you coming to me? He was also quite stern as well in there. He says, why are you coming to me? Go to Abdul Aziz. And this man came to me, says, Sheikh Muhammad Malamani sent me to you. And I'm thinking, he can't send you to me. Why? And he's quite upset, he's like, push me away. Says, don't come to me, go to Abdul Aziz. And then I asked him, what was it you wanted to know? He says, I wanted him to teach me about Hajj. And then I smiled because I realized what it was that Sheikh Muhammad Malamali knows about Hajj more than I ever will in terms of the laws and the hadith and the statements and the du'as and everything. But he hasn't done it as many times as I have. So he sent the student of his to me, not because I'm better than him. I'm nothing compared, but because I have a quality that's different to his. I've been blessed to have been able to do Hajj more often. And then there's other times where people might come and they have a better knowledge of grammar, for example. There's no harm in saying, recognize he has a better knowledge of grammar than I do, but I may have a better. So just don't worry about it. Just if the knowledge is important, ask. And if it's not, just say, MashaAllah, I don't know what you're talking about. It's good anyway. So that's how I do.
But yeah, how
That's
do
how
we
I do it.
yeah, you're mentioning a lot of things and how to go about it, and but usually for commoner, right, when you get to know, when you reach to this stage where you discover, like what you mentioned, is part of your nerves that trigger because you feel that you also know something and all that. How do we counter it with zikr or with salawat, istighfar, or how you mentally and cultivating that I'm nothing, and like what you're saying, everybody has.
We have the most clear, most beautiful prescription from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is salah. Salah is the pillar of this religion. And the reason why it's the pillar of religion is because it deals with the nafs the most. You put your head on the floor and you say, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la, transcendent is my Lord who is most high. If you're really making salah, you can't have kibr. The quality of your salah will be the quality of your attack on your pride. And it's not necessarily the knowledgeable one. And I think I've told you the story previously of a young man who when I used to live in Leicester, he was in Nottingham, a good friend of my brother's. And my brother brought him to my house quite a few times, and he actually ended up coming every Sunday to my house. And one day he came to my house, and he was half of the time he was stoned. He used to smoke a lot of cannabis, and most of the time he was stoned. So, but I loved him very much. He was a friend of my brother's. And he came to my house one day and he's like, Aziz, man, what's all this praying stuff? And I says, look, this is what we do. All day long we're walking around with our heads up high. Just every once in a while, we have to put it on the floor. God says, put your head on the floor. Allah says, put your head on the floor, man. But I didn't go into any detail. I just says, that's what he says, wow, man. Following week, he came to see me again. Every Sunday, he used to come and see me, sometimes with my brother, sometimes on his own. And this time he came and he looked different. He looked like less stoned than he usually was. And he came and he just says, you know what you were talking to me about last week? I need some more. I said, what do you mean? Give me more, man. I just need more, man. So he says, all that bit about putting your head on the floor every night, man. I've been putting my head on the floor all night. Everyone goes to bed. I just put my head on the floor all night until the morning comes. My head's on the floor. And then I realized he's not stopped smoking weed, but he's so busy. He's so busy putting his head on the floor all night that he's less stoned because he's smoking less. So he just says, give me more, man. Give me more, man. Give me more, man. I says, okay, just go upstairs and take a shower. I literally went upstairs, took a shower, and I says, let me tell you one or two things. I says, look, there's only one God, and there's Muhammad is his messenger. I says, is that all right? If you understand that, you're going to be fine. So he said the Shahada. There was nothing to the Islam except him. Now, when he was putting his head on the floor before he was Muslim, what state was he in compared to my state? He put his head on the floor all night long without knowing anything about who the Prophet Muhammad saw. He didn't have any knowledge about what's valid, when, what time is prayer. He didn't have any of them. But his state was higher than ours. And then, alhamdulillah, it was natural that Allah put in his heart that he would become Muslim. Alhamdulillah, so that's, you want to know, dhikr, it is the biggest dhikr is salah.
MashaAllah. Thank you, Shaykh. This is the last question, Shaykh. Someone was asking somehow related to the first question, but a bit different. So in a way that he said that he knows this person, and this person, whenever he meets this person is always angry and always at the agitating state. So he doesn't know if this person is arrogant, pride, or having a mental illness. So how do he go about it?
This is again relates to your own level of emotional intelligence, emotional capacity. Because of my experience in life, I'm quite tolerant. I'm quite capable of dealing with people who are very angry. I'm quite capable of dealing with people who may even be violent. I'm quite capable of dealing with people who can throw abuse at me, and it doesn't really affect me inside as much as maybe other people might affect. So I don't have a difficulty sometimes dealing with angry people. I can walk into an angry situation, I can deal, but there's a point where when I'm feeling weak emotionally, I can't do it. And that's understanding my own emotional capacity, my own emotional intelligence, that what ability I have to deal with this. So the question really depends, what emotional capacity does the person asking the question have? And how much ability does the angry person have in dealing with relationships? Because there are angry people who I have gone into situations where people have been very, very angry, and in some cases where people have been extremely violent. There was one guy who he was like 6'6", West Indian guy who at one point had been interested in Islam, but he was really suffering from a lot of mental damage. He was a boxer, and people just put him in the ring for entertainment, and he just got battered a lot. He was really badly damaged, plus he had a lot of other issues. And I remember him, me having a relationship with him to the extent that one day that he picked somebody up and just threw them through the fish and chip shop window, and then went in there. And they called me. They called the police and they called me. I got there before the police did, and I went up to him. I says, "Why did you do this?" And he's like just about to kill the guy behind the fish and chip shop. He says, "Why did you?" And then he saw me come in, and I just says, "Why are you doing this?" And he put him down, and he said, "I'm hungry." And I says, "Why didn't you come and ask me for money then?" He says, "I was shy." We had this conversation, and then the police came and arrested him. But that ability to talk to him was partly because the relationship was built, but also because I had at that point enough capacity, emotional capacity to deal with it. So it's not a simple answer to say go in and talk to the person. If you have the emotional capacity to build a relationship with that very, very angry person who goes around throwing people through windows because he's hungry, then do it. But if you don't, because you're going to get killed. Yeah. That's a pretty extreme example. So you have to weigh up, what ability do you have? What ability does that person have for developing a relationship with you to such an extent that they can open up to tell you what they're going through? Because only then can you work out what it is that they need in terms of their emotions. In that case, he was just hungry. He needed fish and chips. And if only he had somebody with him who could give him some money, he wouldn't have thrown one person through the shop window and nearly killed the other one, and actually ended up in jail again. But so we can have help. You can help that very, very angry person, but only if you have the ability. So, and may Allah give us all the ability to do that. Get rid of all of those negative qualities and give us those positive qualities that we can deal with, and we can build positive relationships with those around us so that we can have a good, happy life for ourselves and those around us.
Thank you, Shaykh. I think with this we have end today's dars. Thank you very much, Shaykh. Again, every Sunday is a blessing to see you and your dars. We learn so much, and subhanallah, amazing. So I think inshallah next week we see you again, and we hope to see you again, and we pray for your good health, includes your wife, and happy Mother's Day to your wife also. And please
say salam to Amu Khalid. Assalamu alaikum.
MashaAllah, Idris. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. Allah preserve you good health.
Okay.
Okay, before we end, we need your dua and we close.
اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا. Allah bless, benefit us by what we've learnt. اللهم علمنا الذي ينفعنا, and teach us what we need to know, what will benefit us. ونسألك العفو ونسألك التوفيق, and we ask for the ability to follow what the right way. ونسألك التوفيق لتمسك بكتاب الله وسنة. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. Oh Allah, the one who loves to pardon us. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا كريم. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وسلم. اللهم افتح لنا بالخير واختم لنا بالخير واجعل عواقب أمورنا بالخير بيدك الخير والعافية.
Amen.
Ask for a good ending to our lives, a good ending, a good route to that, and a good final.
Amen. Thank you.
Jazakum Allah khairan. Inshallah, we'll see you next
Well,
time.
see you again, inshallah. Pray for us and pray for you too and everyone. Inshallah. Alhamdulillah, everyone. Thank you very much for viewing the Dars with Shaykh Abdul Aziz on Friday just now. There's so much we can learn from Shaykh Abdul Aziz on the different types of nafs that we have in ourselves. So after this, inshallah, in half an hour or a few more minutes time, maybe 11 or 11:15, inshallah, we may have live with Shaykh Mani, inshallah. And tomorrow we also have interesting discussion on healing. So what is healing? So tomorrow our conversation in Ramadan at night, 9:30 p.m. is on healing. And on Tuesday, Imam will be touching on the Tafsir Quran, Surah Qadr, and the final, what we call it, the last 10 days of Ramadan, inshallah. And with this, and not forgetting, so sorry, our humanitarian project, Hospital Senegal. If you like to donate at any amount, please do so. You can check out on our links and Facebook or IG, and also on our collaboration with Free Food for All, the porridge and food for those who are unfortunate in Singapore. You can contribute also any amount. Check the link on our website and IG, inshallah. So with this, I said Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Blessed night, and we see you later or in tomorrow, inshallah. Assalamualaikum.